just came out a few weeks ago, is direct lithium extraction, and so
Right.
so they're pulling lithium out of oil field brine, which I love that angle. You have these brine pits that have been filling up for the last 40 years, and they figured out a way to extract lithium from them. And there's something like this particular company that I'm following. They have a contract with a small Canadian oil producer up in Alberta, and there's something like 4.3 million tons of lithium dissolved in oil field brine. They figured out a way to extract it at like 97% efficiency.
Hey folks, welcome to the Angel Research Podcast. My name is Jason Freert. I'm here with Alex Koyfman, the director of Microcap Insider. Is this our first No, this isn't our first podcast together.
No, we did the one with Brian last year.
Oh yeah,
like
with his
October.
infamous prediction that he won't
I,
stop talking about.
yeah, I had a few things to say about that
Oh
prediction.
yeah, let's get right into it.
Yeah, so if you go back and look at that podcast, I remember his famous words were, "That's a sign of a bottom." Now, why did he say that? He said that because right before that he said that, I said that I had just taken some of the biggest risks of my life in private equity,
Right.
and put a bunch of money into a bunch of non-public companies, and that my strategy was to keep that money invested and not illiquid during the coming turmoil that we were all expecting. And so he said that's a sign of a bottom. And then of course, he's been talking about it ever since. But he said it. But who actually put their money where their mouth is? I did. That's right. So I feel like the true prediction came through my actions, which came a couple months before all that. And your next question is probably how did all that go for me? Most of those companies are still not trading.
Yeah.
And the reason that they're not trading is because just microcaps in general, which most of those companies would be if they were to IPO, I think that they come last in terms of, with the greed returning. They're the last that investors start piling back into because they are the most risky. They are the most speculative. So
Right. So those private deals that you're talking about, are they still raising money, or they're just waiting for the market to kind of be better time for them to go public?
a couple of them are still raising money, but they are raising money at much higher prices. So,
Right.
So that's already a good thing. A couple of them are waiting. Two of them are biotech deals, and they're waiting for milestones before they go public because they want to go public at a higher price. So
I mean, the IPO market in general has been pretty abysmal.
yeah, it has. And
So, I mean, what's the biggest name that's gone IPO recently? I can't even think of one.
yeah, I used to keep much better track of new IPOs, but I sometimes look at the IPO calendar on my TD account, and yeah, it's pretty empty compared to like 2 years ago when you would have a couple every day, 3 or 4 a week at least. Right now, it's pretty quiet.
Right.
It's also summertime, so it's like the worst of the worst. But yeah, you're supposed to invest when there's blood in the street, right? So that was the plan.
Right. And it's easy to say, but it's harder, like you said, it's harder to actually do.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It really is. I talked about this with Hammer last week about the idea of contrarian investing makes sense, but the reason that it's so hard is because you're staring down the face of
the trend
of blood.
Yeah.
Right. And we talked about, I mean, one of the things that was kind of glossed over that Brian still brings up is, Bitcoin and cryptos at the time was the same thing. It was like the whole Sam Bankman-Fried thing, like, is crypto done? And I think it was trading at like 15, 16,000, and that ended up being the bottom, at least in this cycle as well.
Yeah.
So you have to look for these signs. And I think to me, it's almost like a skill that you have to learn over a period of time of like, yes, I see this signal in the market. Everybody is down on this particular thing, but everything else tells me that it's the right call. I'm going to go ahead and pile in.
Yeah. And by that reasoning, who wants to be anything but a contrarian? I mean, if you just go with the pack, by definition, you're never really going to get too far. Like you'll make incremental gains, and if the market is trending upward, yeah, you'll do okay. But you'll let's just put it this way: you'll never be a speculator, which is what I like to call myself, and I always have. And I guess that's just a nice word for a gambler. But yeah, you have to. When everyone else is really nervous, you have to be brave. The problem is you'll be nervous and brave at the same time, and you're going to be up at night and nauseous and sometimes vomiting, and you have to not sell.
Right.
So,
And that's a great segue into the whole money management side of things, because at the end of the day, most people that put their money with somebody, they say that it's because of that they want to sleep at night or whatever. They don't want to have to worry about it. But essentially that becomes a loss avoidance issue with people don't take their money out of a money manager for not making money. They do it because they lost too much and they've lost trust. So then the money managers and the financial guys are the last thing they want to do is lose your money, and so they end up just putting it into an index fund while still collecting fees.
Well, I think the last thing they want to happen is for you to leave. That's the last thing.
Right.
Them losing money, they're still making their commission. So their interests aren't necessarily aligned with their clients' interests, which everybody knows this. The financial industry is parasitic by definition. They have to take some off the top. And I don't want to shit all over them again, because we do have assets with a money manager, but yeah, these are assets that I don't want to keep track of. I trust him. He spends all day looking for good investments and conservative investments, like fixed income type stuff that will bring in sort of a predictable amount every year. And as much as I spend thinking about investing and stocks and all that stuff, I don't want to think about that. And that's what he's paid to do. I think that most people who don't have the time, like, doctors and lawyers who are working 60 and 70 hours a week doing other stuff, they shouldn't be thinking about their investments that much. They should put it somewhere and just know that they're going to make a certain percentage.
But
at the end of the
you
year.
can do that without a money manager, right? You just put it into an index, like put it into SPY.
Yeah, you just
and you
do
don't
what
have
he
to
does.
pay.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I manage my IRA, for example, and maybe I'm a fool, but I still think that they, those guys that they go to business school and they do this full time. They still have some knowledge and expertise that's worth using. Just don't expect them to make you rich by any means.
Right.
That's not.
So you're doing that in planning for retirement, safe investment, and you're 100% of your focus when you're running your letters is speculation, the big home runs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and private investing, and that's where the big money comes in.
That's where the money is made.
Where were most of your what sectors were most of the investments that came from last year? And we're talking about off-market private placement deals, right? Which is typically the focus in your first call newsletter.
Yeah. So on the heels of the beginning of the war in Ukraine, there's a lot of oil and gas deals. That was actually probably the only stuff that was getting actively financed is oil and gas deals for obvious reasons, because the prices went up. And it coincided with a lot of fear in the market generally, so the financing kind of started to taper off in other sectors. But there, it was fairly active. Something that's coming back right now, I've noticed, is lithium.
Right.
Lithium mining, lithium extraction, battery companies. So that's playing into another trend that's more than just emerging now. It's already emerged. So,
yeah, the EV metal trend has been something you've been on top of for, I guess years now.
Yeah, and batteries in particular, just next-gen batteries. I mean, right now we're hearing a lot about solid-state batteries, right? So that's like the next big thing. If you've been reading the news the last couple of weeks, you saw that Toyota they just released their kind of timetable for the next like 3 or 4 different releases of generations of solid state batteries all the way to the end of the decade. And so those are all still lithium batteries, by the way. They
Right.
have a
So
different electrolyte.
yeah, do you want to sort of explain what the difference is between a solid state battery and your
Sure.
traditional, I guess, lithium ion battery?
Yeah. So you still have lithium as one of the key materials, but the difference is that the electrolyte, which is the medium through which the electrons flow from the cathode to the anode, is solid, as the name would suggest. It's not liquid. And the problem with liquid electrolyte is that when it heats up, there's a lot of oxygen dissolved in that liquid, and there's also a lot of organic compounds. And so what happens when you raise the temperature enough is that the oxygen starts to bubble out. And if you've ever seen a battery expanding and like puffing out, that's what's happening. If you apply enough heat, it will catch fire. And that's one of the main problems with standard lithium-ion batteries is the fire hazard. But with a solid state battery, you have a solid electrolyte that obviously you can't boil it, no matter how hot you make it. Well, there's a limit to everything, but any normal temperatures that charging will generate, they're not going to create a fire hazard. They're also much smaller. The electrolyte portion of the battery is much smaller, so it takes up less space. It's got a higher energy density. So what you have is a battery that can hold more energy, it can charge faster, and it's also significantly reduced fire hazard. So
Yeah, the fire hazard is a big thing
it's becoming huge.
yeah, as we've personally witnessed. I think
I was there. I was in the office.
you were in the office
Yeah.
when our hoverboard that we did get off of Amazon that was probably shipped over from China
Yeah.
started smoking, popping,
Yep.
and we had to put it out in the fire escape. And yeah, it luckily we were in the office at the time, and we used the fire extinguisher to put it out.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's seemingly almost every week you're hearing of apartment fires.
Yeah, in
when
New
people
York.
were
Right.
are sleeping.
And the reason behind those is most of those fires are caused by e-bike batteries, and so e-bike batteries are like big cities like New York. You have e-bike sharing services and stuff. A lot of those batteries are refurbished and recycled, and
Right.
they're done in a way that isn't really regulated yet, and so you just get substandard used up batteries essentially that should be thrown out altogether, and they're putting them back into the cycle, back into use, and they're the biggest fire hazards there are. And so right now they're passing regulations on how they have to be recycled, how they have to be refurbished, when they have to be thrown out. And the problem is going to get bigger and bigger, obviously, because all these batteries are aging. There's only a certain number of charge-discharge cycles that any rechargeable battery can withstand, and they want to squeeze as much usage
Right.
out of each one as they can. And it's going to become even more common in poorer economies where they don't have really new batteries at all. They're all coming from elsewhere. It's a secondary market. So, for years now, airlines have been regulating, they've been telling you if you can bring a charged battery, a spare battery on board, how you can store it. And so
Right.
they
There was a time, I think there was a certain Samsung model that they wouldn't let you bring on
Right,
planes
yeah.
because it was
exploding.
known to
Yeah, I
explode.
mean, could you imagine that if you have one not in your carry-on, but in your checked luggage? If a fire breaks
It's
out,
down, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
By the time you're
you'll just have
done.
smoke in the. Yeah, I mean, it's a bomb basically, and so that's a big problem, and that is an issue that solid-state batteries are going to really.
So I've
Okay.
heard of solid state batteries for a while. What has been, why is now they're thinking it's time? Like you mentioned all the benefits of it.
Mhm.
What has been the holdup of getting them into production? Just the technology,
I think that the main holdup is what usually the case is that the current benchmark was, first of all, they know how to produce it. It's already, all the machines are tooled to produce it. It's cheap. And so, like, how do you retool a company like CATL? It's the biggest battery maker in the world. It's going to take years and billions of dollars for them to retool to solid state batteries. So the biggest holdup, I think, is that it wasn't lucrative for them to do it. But if one person does it, if one company does it, like Toyota, and they start releasing cars that suddenly have a 900-mile range and they charge from 20 to 80% in 15 minutes, then everyone's going to have no choice. That's going to be the new benchmark. So I think it's not so much complacency. It was economy. Was
right.
the
And it
problem.
was the lithium ion batteries for your cell phone. They were good enough. They
Yeah.
were, they got
only
better all the
explode-
time.
They don't explode that often. I mean, it's just.
But
every once in a while.
is the solid state push? Is it specifically a safety thing? But it sounds like it's everything. It's benefit.
It's
like
everything.
it can be smaller. It can charge faster. It can hold. Do they still have the cycle, like a certain number of cycles that
They
they're
last
gonna
longer. Yeah, they last longer. So like they fail cell by cell from what I understand, and so just the rate of failure is slower. And the problem with the current lithium-ion batteries is that it's that cell failure uh, that creates the fire hazard, because the more of the individual cells that become inoperable, no longer usable, the more resistance you get, the more heat you get during charging.
Right.
And so they become a fire hazard progressively more with each charging cycle. I think right now that current batteries are like 300 to 500 cycles charge discharge before they really start to kind of just lose their ability to hold the charge, and they get hotter and hotter
Yeah.
every time you use them. With the solid state batteries, it may be 50% more, twice as much even. So it'll be a significant difference.
So you're talking about Toyota and like electric car batteries, but I'm assuming these can be used anywhere,
Sure.
right? But is that the big focus because those batteries are big and they're
they're the biggest and they're the most expensive. So I mean, I would actually, just intuitively, I would expect this technology to appear in consumer electronics. At least along the same time frames.
Yeah, I mean laptops, cell phones,
Yeah,
all that.
and that'll happen soon enough. That'll happen. The thing is, it's a lot like the amount of miles that you can drive in your EV I think it's directly proportionate to how many people are going to be buying that car. Like I think few people really consider how many charge discharge cycles your cell phone battery is going to last, or how many minutes it's going to go between. Even though they do advertise that with a car, its range is like one of the key metrics.
Range anxiety, I think, is what they call it,
Right.
right? And I've just from talking to, the average Joe on the street, that seems to be the number one hesitation.
Sure, it
is.
is.
I don't want to get stuck somewhere and, run out of juice, so
Yeah.
to speak.
And
I mean,
the
because
thing
we've
is-
all, had our cell phone, run out of battery. We've all
course.
had a laptop battery. So it's kind of built in, and you're like, well, if that's my car,
Right.
that's bad.
Well, your car's supposed to tell you. It's supposed to start warning you,
Yeah.
and it's.
But then you got to hope that, I mean, it's more common now. You got to hope you're within. There's a gas station, depending on where you live in the country, you can find a gas station pretty accessible. But an EV charging station,
You don't know where they are.
yeah, and
So-
you got to sit there for, you're thinking 20, 30 minutes.
Right. The way Tesla deals with this is that they just, the car knows where the nearest charging station is. It knows how much range there is, and
It's going to drive you to it.
it's maybe not yet, but it'll at the very least tell you, look,
Yeah.
like if you don't get it here, you might be kind of screwed
Right.
down the road. But the problem is, it's not always the same. Like I remember I was watching a YouTube video where a guy was reviewing a Rivian pickup, and he, like Rivians are trucks, and they have a shit ton of torque for the reason that they tow. They're built to tow up to like 5,000 kilograms, something like that. Don't quote me on that; I might be off. But obviously, the range that you can drive your truck changes drastically with what you're towing behind you. And so a Rivian will go from like a 350 mile range to a 100 mile range if you're towing full capacity. And so it's no longer the same as just filling up your tank. Like your mileage.
Yeah,
will
I mean,
really
you have
change.
that happens a little bit with cars. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I was driving this weekend in the truck, and we were in the mountains, and the range was like, oh, you got 55 miles, and then we started driving up,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
was like dropping dramatically
Yeah.
down. So I think that's something people could deal with. But if it's significant like that, like 300 to 100,
Yeah, you have to stay very vigilant,
yeah,
basically.
and people look, consumers don't want to do that.
Exactly. They're getting less and less vigilant, by the year. They want to be lazier, and the car does a lot of the thinking for you. It does. It's going to warn you, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's like at least a 20 or 30 minute, stopover that you're going to have to make, which is a pain in the ass in and of itself. So yeah. Anyway, going back to the original topic, that is the number one obstacle for prospective EV buyers is that they don't want to wait that long to be able to drive again. Americans suck at patience, generally speaking. So a 900-mile range, I would guess that's about what people drive in a month, right? I know you drive way more.
Yeah,
So do
but
I.
a 900-mile range would be, yeah, because right now I think the better EVs are teetering on being comparable to your average car. If
Right,
you get the
gas tank.
upgrade, yeah, if you get the upgrade or whatever. Although, like, my diesel truck I got 600 miles on a
We have a big,
on
it's a huge
on
tank.
on a
too.
fill. Yeah, it's a huge tank, but still, it's like it's not like an EV. It's not like you can. I mean, I guess you can get the bigger battery, but I think maxing out, like, what's the best one on the market
Right
today?
now, it's the Lucid. I forget. It's the Lucid Air something or other, but it's their top of the line model, obviously, and it's just over 500 miles.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's still like you're waiting 40 minutes for it to charge all the way.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think
not
people
bad.
also, the home charging is it's an expense. You gotta,
Takes a long time.
get a $1,500, $2,000 charger installed in your
And you still have to charge overnight.
house. Not everybody has a place to put it, all that kind of stuff. But I think the trend is pretty obvious that it's going towards EVs. The car.
I mean, it's mandated, man. They're in Europe. They're starting ICE bans in like 2025. So
Well, is it Norway?
Norway.
Norway, where they've made it basically, it is, it's you're stupid if you buy an ICE.
It's also they produce more oil per capita than Saudi Arabia. How weird is that?
Yeah, their fund. I think their sovereign wealth fund is funded by their oil.
Well, they can just use the oil to produce electricity to charge your EV. Make a lot of sense.
Right.
So, yeah, Europe is going to start banning ICE sales. They're considering doing the same thing here. So it's whether you like it or not, it's coming.
Right. So you might as well make money investing in there.
Yeah.
So is, in addition to this battery stuff, is that the big focus on playing this trend? Is there any other trends you're focusing on?
This isn't batteries per se. It's the precursor to the battery, which is lithium. So one of my favorite upcoming recommendation. Well, no, it's already an existing recommendation for MI. It just came out a few weeks ago. Is direct lithium extraction. And so,
Right.
So they're pulling lithium out of oil field brine, which I love that angle. You have these brine pits that have been filling up for the last 40 years, and they figured out a way to extract lithium from them. And there's something like this particular company that I'm following. They have a contract with a small Canadian oil producer up in Alberta, and there's something like 4.3 million tons of lithium dissolved in oil field brine. They figured out a way to extract it at like 97% efficiency.
And so these are like Alberta, they're the oil sands, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're using, so,
It's basically the wastewater of oil production.
right, because they're shooting water in there if they're doing the, fracking.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do they typically are doing with the water?
It collects in these huge ponds, right?
Okay.
And then, so the way that this company's set up their deal with the oil company is that they just stick their apparatus at some point in the process, and they cycle the brine because they don't care what's in the water for the purpose of fracking, right? Like it can be dirty, it could be full of anything, and they just pull out the lithium and put it right back into the pond. They can keep on fracking all they want, and but
So
then
they're partnering with these. So they're partnering with existing operations that are fracking stuff.
Yeah.
The one, I think, a couple. I mean, probably a couple of months ago, the 60 Minutes story on the Lithium Valley. Did you watch that?
No.
Where they were doing that, but geothermal. I think it was a geothermal plant
okay.
that was
Same thing.
firing
Yeah,
the thing. So
water
same,
goes down, water comes back up.
right.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot more fracking operations than
why not? And it's like $70,000 a ton, which is what lithium is going for nowadays. But your production overhead is $3,000 a ton. It's kind of a no-brainer. So this is a $20 million company, and it's sitting on something like $320 billion worth of lithium. That's the coolest part about it, is that they don't have to mine. They don't have to like explore. They know exactly where it is. They just have to set up their operation, these little plants, and they just process the water, pull out the lithium, and it's good to go. There's no real guesswork going on here.
Are they paying the oil companies to
There's some
like
yeah,
set up shop
yeah,
there?
of course.
Is there any other competition that they have to go against?
So there are a couple of other companies that are operating, the same general idea, but market cap wise, the next biggest company, or next smallest company, is like 5 times as big, and the biggest company in the space is like $1 billion company. And again, this is a $20 million company, so it's nothing but upside. This company's been in existence for 2 years. The stock's been trading for, I think, less than 1. Much less than 1. It's just a couple of months, and so I'm a shareholder. I'll say it outright. Proud to be one. So
And that's a micro cap insider
it's a
play.
microcap insider play. They are doing a financing soon. So
Okay, so how does that work for a public company then?
Well, public. What do you mean? How does it work? How do financings work for public companies?
Yeah, so they are, the stock's trading for what?
Stock's trading for like 20 cents.
Right. And so
22
they'll
cents.
say, hey, we're going to raise money at 15 cents or whatever.
Yeah, they raise money at,
Why would the question is, why would someone want to do the financing
It's a
versus
good
just
question.
buying it over the?
So for the long-sighted investor, the benefit is in the warrants. So they basically, every share that you buy, the money goes to the company. So that's like, just procedurally wise, they're trying to raise money. This isn't money that's
Right, it's
just,
new shares are being issued.
yeah, it's new shares being issued. They're getting operating capital, which is what they need since they're scaling up right now. But for the private placement investor, they want the warrants. And what a warrant is it's basically it's like a little mini contract, a right to buy shares at a set price for a set number of months. So for this particular company, it's the warrants are good for like 3 years after you participate in the private placement. So let's just say that the warrants are priced at 25 cents or 30 cents. That's higher than the stock is trading right now. Seems like a shitty deal. But in 3 years, the stock could be trading at $10, and you're still buying them at 30 cents. So it's free money. It's a risk.
And
still.
if the stock never doesn't go up to that price,
You don't have to
then
exercise.
they just expire and
Yeah,
it's kind of
you don't
they're
exercise.
worthless. So it's kind of like a free lottery ticket.
You don't pay for the warrant until you want to exercise it, and you only exercise it when it's beneficial to you. So
Right.
yeah.
And that's just a little bit of a kicker to the investors.
I think that's probably one of the number one draws. One of the strongest draws for private placements is that it's that warrant coverage that really, I mean, it's again
because when you do the private placement, your shares are probably going to be locked up for a period of time, right?
Yeah, like 4 to 6 months usually, which isn't really that long. But yeah, with the warrants, it's risk-free risk-free upside that you can sort of like nobody can argue with.
Right.
So
this recommendation is in Microcap Insider.
it is. It's in.
And are the people from Microcap going to get the information on the private placement, or is that sort of reserved for?
It's sort of reserved for
first call people.
Because,
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the whole angle.
Gotcha.
So yeah, you would have to subscribe. Click subscribe as they do.
Package deal. We can set up a package deal. First call and Microcap
We can
Insider.
talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
But why not?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
You know, we're
Okay.
flexible.
Yeah, I think so.
So-
Well, we'll put information in the description, or you can, email
Or call even.
or call. Yeah. Subscribe.
That's the word.